Even if you're not a professional woodworker, you want to use the glues that the pros use. And 3 out of 4 pro woodworkers trust Titebond as their choice. For building wood furniture or cabinets to making picture frames or birdhouses, or just general repairs around the house, Titebond has the widest choice of glues to help with whatever project you want to tackle. Titebond, the right glue for your next project. For more information, visit titebond.com or see them on Facebook and Instagram. Welcome to Shop Talk Live, Fine Woodworking's bi-weekly podcast. I'm here with Fine Woodworking Creative Director Mike Pekovich.
Hey guys.
Special Projects Editor Matt Kenny.
Hello.
Video Manager Jeff Rose.
Hello. What's up, Jeff?
I'm your host, web producer Ben Strana.
Hello, Ben.
Hello. If you have any questions you'd like answered on the show, send them into shoptalk@taunton.com. Any links or articles we mention will be on this episode's show notes page, which can be found at shoptalklive.com or finewoodworking.com. Gentlemen, Fine Woodworking Live's coming up.
It is just a few weeks away, right?
Matt, you're going to be really, really busy, aren't you?
At Fine Woodworking Live?
Yes, and in the next few weeks. But, like, we had a meeting, and it was like, we had a meeting yesterday of all of the responsibilities, and as it was all going down, it was like, oh, and who's in charge of this? Matt. Who's in charge of this? Matt. Who's in charge of the? And it was, I felt bad for you.
It won't be too bad.
Yeah.
I'll be drunk the whole time, so who cares?
That's right. It'll be any other day.
It'll be like any other work day. Yeah. No, it'll be fine. It'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
So you're doing your hands-on Kumiko, right?
First day, sort of a pre-sign-up class. Yep.
Okay. And how many people are?
I think 15. I think that was the max.
That's a lot for a class, right?
Yeah, maybe less. I think that sounds about right, though.
There's 15 people participating, but there's 45 people sitting in bleachers and watching, and they all paid. They all paid.
There probably will be people creeping in. Yeah.
I guess, unless we lock the door or something. That'd be fun. I didn't think about that. That'd be okay.
People just hanging out, watching?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. Yeah, so if you show up early, if you didn't sign up for a class, come on in.
All right.
But Mike will not answer questions because you didn't pay the class fee. So
what's that called when you sneak into a class in college and
you audit a course?
Audit a class.
You audit a course, I guess, yeah.
Matt will be standing by the door. Just give him $10 and come on in.
When you audit, you register, but you're not getting a grade or anything.
Do you have to pay for it?
But you probably maybe pay a reduced fee, but
So that's the $10 you slip Matt.
Yeah.
To get in.
Yep.
Okay.
yeah, that will go directly to my pocket. The new shop fund.
Yeah, you're coming up on a new shop, huh?
Yep. I got 3 weeks from today, and I have a new house and a new shop.
And the first thing you do is putting in a floor, right?
The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to close on my house. If it's early enough in the day, I'm going to go straight to Home Depot and get plywood and 2x4s and rigid foam insulation.
You're probably not even going to clean the house itself. You don't care. You just want to make sure there's a floor in the shop.
No, I'll clean the house.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'll do stuff like that. But no, I'm going to put the floor in as fast as I can so that I can, when I move my crud in, it doesn't have to get moved out again for a floor.
Yeah, that's a really smart idea. Because once it's all in there, it's like,
yeah,
I'm good. I'll put the floor in later.
Yeah.
That's where I'm residing right now. So I was like, I can't afford it right now, and it's never going to happen. So I'm still trying to get electricity run out to my shop.
That's going to get done really fast too. That's
Yours, not mine.
Yeah. That's a nice thing. This is my house.
Yeah.
And things are going to get done in the order that I want them to get done.
Matt's writing the priorities.
That's
right
now. Matt. There's only one person writing priorities, and that's me.
Is it exciting, or is it just?
It is exciting. It's really exciting.
What's the space like?
It's a 2-car garage with a fairly peaky roof.
Is it like Peaky Blinders?
Yes, like the Peaky Blinders. Kind of like a steep roof. It's attached to a cape, so it kind of looks like a cape does. It's a nice size space.
Can you walk around? Like if you put a second floor on, can you walk around, or you're still sort of stooping? Is there like storage room up like above the rafters or
There
ceiling
could
joists?
be a little bit, but I don't think I'm going to use it. It's not very big. So, and then along the back wall, there's actually a separate one-car garage that comes off the back of the garage with a shed roof.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use that for lumber storage.
Okay.
So it's I'm pretty excited.
That's cool.
Are you anticipating any? Because you'll have more space than you used to have, right?
I'll have more space than my current shop, but it's not bigger than the shop I had in my previous life.
So no, like I finally got room for this machine that I wanted.
No,
Okay.
no, because I'm going to get rid of the radial alarm saw that's in storage right now. I think I'm just going to give it to a guy I know, and I already got rid of
call him again.
Huh?
And never call him again.
Yeah, I'm just going to leave it on his driveway. I got rid of the Hitachi Super Surfacer.
Did you?
Yeah. So I might. I've been thinking I might get rid of my 12-inch joiner, but I'm not positive. But I might.
For what you could get rid of a 12-inch joiner for, can you get, what would you want, like an 8-inch with a segmented cutter head, something like that?
Yeah, I would get an 8-inch with a segmented cutter head. That's the problem, is that the price. It still costs me money to get an 8-inch.
Right.
It's going to be more expensive than what I can sell the 12-inch joiner for.
Right.
So,
But you would gain space because the beds on that 12-inch are, it's an aircraft carrier, so
it's like 7 feet long. The whole joiner is. Yeah, it doesn't really take up that much space. So,
but your space may be a little bit smaller than your old shop, but because it's like a fully dedicated shop, and you're going to be able to insulate that thing a lot better, and it's going to be a lot warmer. I think it's a miles different and better shop, I think, once you get in there and set up.
yeah, it definitely will be. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, just it's going to be so much better. All around in so many different ways. Just to have a shop, you're right that you don't walk through it to get into the house.
Yes,
and it's only there for shop space.
Yeah,
and I'll have complete control over how it gets done. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Is this the first time that you are setting up a shop and you know exactly what you want? Because the last time you set it up, you had just moved to Connecticut, and so now it's like exactly the layout you want. You've spent 10 years in other people's shops figuring out what works for them and what might work for you, and I think that would be exciting to like really like exactly what you want, so you can do it right from the get-go.
Yeah, by and large, a lot of what I think about what I want, though, is not necessarily in terms of layout. I think that'll come to me once I get into it, really look in there, and I can say this will go here, this will go there. But actually, it's more like I was thinking, okay, well, there's this window, but it's not big enough, so I want a bigger window there, and then I'll have my bench there, and then I'll get really good natural light coming in for photographs.
Yeah.
And I've thought about other things too, like. There is going to be a ceiling, and on the ceiling, I think it'll work that if I'm going to put a central, like Lazy Susan on the ceiling, and then I'm going to attach an articulated arm, kind of like one of these things, and there'll be a camera mount at the bottom of that, and then it'll be like a tripod, but it'll try to get it to extend anywhere that I might need it. And so that I can take photographs or video. I've been thinking about stuff like that. The layout.
He's not even going to woodwork. He's just taking pictures.
Could you put like a trapeze swing on the Lazy Susan too? That would be nice.
Just for fun.
Yeah.
But I have thought about some about where things are going to go, like where my table saw will be, where my joiner will be, and where I'll put the planer and things like that.
Yeah.
So in my tool cabinet. So yeah, I do know. The nice thing is, right, I know exactly what I need in my shop. And that makes it a lot easier to make my shop right away.
Yeah.
Because when I first moved to Connecticut, I didn't even have, all I had was a table saw. And I didn't have a planer, I didn't have a joiner, I didn't have a bandsaw or a drill press, or really a bench. So it was sort of like just kind of as I went, I was designing the shop, right? And then the shop that I currently have had for the last year, was makeshift, and it was just how can I fit the crap in there?
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, this time it's gonna be really good. I'm excited about it.
Yeah. We're excited for you. All right, so let's we're gonna do something a little different today. And for the past, I don't know, year, the questions have been piling up, and that's awesome. Everybody's been sending in questions consistently, and it's great. We don't run out. But unfortunately, we're about 4 months behind on answering questions. And I would like to lessen that gap right now. So we're going to be doing a quick fire episode. And I've got 15 questions here. Normally we answer at best 5, and we've been getting pretty lengthy lately, so it's probably going to come down to 3 or 4 for most episodes because I like digging in. I like really chatting, if you will. But that's not going to happen this episode. We are going to try and knock through some of these. And so let's begin that. For the first question, this question comes from Tim. Guys, he's asking the wrong crew here. I need some relationship advice. All right. Last week, my girlfriend needed to remove a staple from a document. And everybody cringes in unison, all of the listeners.
Now, see, I read this, and I have an answer you guys are not expecting, but go ahead.
All right. So she went into my shop, grabbed one of my chisels off the wall, and used it to pry the offending staple free. She can't remember if she used one of my Japanese chisels or the antique Stanley, but whatever she chose, it would have been more than up to the task after many hours of flattening and sharpening my chisels to a mere finish. Needless to say, I was not happy. She thinks I'm crazy for getting worked up over a silly chisel. We've decided to let you guys settle this. Should I allow her to use my hand tools for household tasks? Should I buy her a proper staple remover? Or is it time to let her go? All right.
So what's my answer?
Yes.
Set the bar.
All right, I'm setting the bar. So part of me thinks that the fact that he's even asking this question means that this relationship's not going to last.
Oh, my goodness.
Because let me tell you something right now. If you have someone that's a good partner, right? You let them do whatever they want to with your tools because that's more important than your tools. Right? You guys are like dead silent. However,
yeah.
So I would not be upset, but I would say, well, let's not do that again. And here's something instead that you could use, a thing that's made to do that called a staple remover.
So,
Well, first off, I mean, staples, it's a pretty mild steel. They're pretty soft.
Right.
So you're not really going to hurt a chisel by prying up a staple.
You shouldn't, no.
Question is, after having used a really sharp chisel to remove a staple, did it work really well? And if so,
is there a whole new market here?
I would rather have just a beautiful handmade Japanese staple removing chisel in the house as opposed to the stupid alligator spring staple remover. So I would say
buy a chisel for her.
Yeah, if she liked it, that's the next gift.
Michael always finds a way of buying another tool.
Yes.
I don't know. It just sounds. I agree with you. That actually would be a great resolution. But what if? I mean, someone's going to end up getting cut by a chisel.
That's my question, and I think you can twist this around to, for your safety, my darling. Don't use my chisels.
No, I wouldn't go there. I like getting another chisel because you know what chisel is also good for? A
chiseling
letter opener. Because you know, like the actual letter openers that you're supposed to stick in there, they look like a belt. They don't work at all.
Yeah.
But I have one of those Hawk marking knives, those big fat ones.
Yes.
With the spear point.
Yep.
I don't like it as a marking knife, so it lives in my little pencil jar at my desk. That's an awesome, like all around tool for letters and packages and tape and all that kind of stuff.
Cleaning fingernails.
Yeah,
and
it's fantastic.
deboning
So
chicken.
I would think maybe that's it. Maybe it's like a nice big fat Hawk spear point marking knife.
I think you're climbing down the ladder of likability all of a sudden, where everyone's going like, Mike has so many tools. He's He leaves a hawk marking knife at his desk to open letters and
Yeah.
staples.
It comes down to the right tool for the job.
All right.
I think that's the biggest thing is, did it work? Was it the best tool for the job? If it's not the best tool for the job, let's look into getting the best tool for removing staples, because I'm down with that. Whether it's the perfect fingernail clipper, staple remover, potato peeler, paring knife, the right tool for the job is an awesome thing no matter what you're doing.
Okay, but if one of your loved ones went out to your shop and took a chisel off the wall and removed a staple,
Yeah.
you're not perturbed?
No.
Okay. Because I have walked in and my wife was using a chisel to like pry curtain hardware off of off of the wall. And I was like, that's not what that's for. No. Don't ever do that. Please don't ever touch my chisels again, because I spent a lot of time making them sharp. And she thought I was crazy. And she was a little annoyed with me.
I don't know. But I do have a lock and an alarm on my shop.
He has retina ID, fingerprint ID, DNA. You have to provide DNA.
Well, Tim,
Blood sample.
we have been of no help, I'm sure.
Well, I think Mike's answer is the best. If she really like using a chisel, get a cheap chisel for her and let her use that.
Yeah, sure.
And then when she cuts her finger open, say you.
I did not say any of that.
All right, question number 2. I have a 2-car garage with cinder block walls. I'm converting this into a new shop. I saw that Mike had a very similar situation to mine. In the 2011 issue of Tools and Shops, you covered the renovation of his shop. I was planning on renovating mine in the same manner, mostly just using the same method for insulating as he did. Mike, have you been in that shop? Mike, having been in that shop for a while now, would you have done anything differently?
Only one thing. Everything is perfect.
From
It works
Chris.
really well. There was, so cinder block walls, the blocks are all hollow, and there was like a little hole sort of punched in one, probably from an old screw that was trying to, you pound into the wall and it makes a little hole or something like that, one of those tap cons. Anyway, while I was doing the whole shop, like a little mouse ran over and it ran up the wall and ran into that hole. And I had a lot of those cans of the spray insulation, the little foam stuff. So I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to fill this. I just filled up that hole and that mouse is gone. No,
It's not gone.
I have a permanent infestation of mice, mainly in my attic of my shop. So that was the bad idea, was sort of, creating sort of like a mouse habitat without properly sort of
I think
mousing.
that was going to happen regardless.
Yeah,
I
it's
know.
New England.
Yeah.
Yes, and my shop is warmer.
Your shop is- they find a way to get in.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
You've got a chicken coop next to you and all that stuff. There's mice.
Yeah.
What people don't know about our office is that when I sit at my desk, I can see what Mike is doing at his desk. And Mike has
Can
been,
you?
yes, he has been on SketchUp redesigning his shop as a hot tub party house. So he's got 2 hot tubs in there right now and a bar.
I don't think that's a good idea based on rusty tools. But
Yeah.
so how much insulation did you put up?
2 layers of probably, I don't know if it's quite like a rigid 1.5 inch thick sheets.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want like a direct, what do you call that? Connection
Jeff, what do you
between
call that?
the cinder block and your drywall. So I didn't have the studs.
Thermal bridging.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I laid one sheet flat on the cinder block, contiguous, no seams.
Okay.
And then I built a wall, a 2x4 wall on top of that. Maybe I might have laid those flat on top of that.
Yes, you
And
did.
then
yeah.
insulated in between, and then my drywall went on there. So 2 layers, but the 2x4s were flat instead of going all the way to the wall. Really toasty, worked really, really well.
Do you have any plans for insulating the shop other than the floor?
Well, so I have a traditional stud wall, and it's exposed right now. And I don't know yet. I haven't priced out insulation. I mean, I would love to do spray foam, but I think that's probably too expensive. So I would do rigid foam, but I don't know if I can do what Mike did because I would somehow have to cover up the studs that are already there, and then put other studs in to attach the drywall to, maybe.
I would just take
Send a
advantage of
question
studs.
to the Fine Home
Yeah,
Building
so I'll
podcast.
probably just end up doing do spray foam to do all the where the cover all the cracks on the sheathing, and then do bat insulation unless I can afford rigid foam.
You can't.
I would just do exactly what Patrick McComb from Fine Home Building would tell you to do,
That's probably
and then do that.
because Patrick is
sends me
most
on-
likely going to be there doing it with me. So
I ask him all the time. It's like, how do I do this? He goes, you do this. And I'm like, nah, I can't afford that. I can't do that. I can't do that. And then like 6 months later, I wind up doing exactly what he says because I screwed it up the first time and he was right.
yeah, I always do exactly what Patrick tells me.
That's sort of like when I go to a gardening person, say, I always like my tomatoes always like die. What do? They do first this, and this. Nah, I can't do all that. So I just dig a hole, put them in, watch them sort of wither away all summer. Oh, well.
All right, question number 3. I will be making a bed soon, and I purchased the fine woodworking plans for the arts and crafts bed. Yesterday, I realized that the plans are for a queen-size bed, but my mattress is king-size. Is it okay to simply stretch out the plans to accommodate the width of my mattress? I'm concerned that changing the proportions will affect the look of the bed. What do you think? Any other considerations I should take into account? Jason.
If you have a bandsaw that's big enough, just cut your mattress down.
Foam mattress.
Just rip it down.
The problem with the king size bed is proportionately it becomes about as wide as it is long. It just
Right.
becomes like a big old square. That's the biggest, I think, nightmare when it comes to designing king size bed is you can make the headboard and footboard look however you want. It's still just a big old square. So there's nothing you can do. Okay, short of that, because I've ended up making a couple king size beds for people. This particular design you chose, it's a Gary Rogowski riff on a green and green piece. When you look at it, one of the primary features is the lower stretcher on the footboard. It has sort of like a belly to the bottom of the stretcher,
Right.
which on a shorter bed is nice. It sort of echoes what's happening with that sort of the mid stretcher as well. However, that belly gives an impression that the bed is sagging. And I think the wider you go, the more that's going to happen. So I would reverse the arch on that. I would just almost have, a normal arch on the bottom of the apron so it's wider with a little cloud lift at the bottom edges, and then it arches a little bit narrower toward the center. And I think that's going to take the curse off that particular design, trying to lengthen that thing out. I think everything else is fine.
Structurally, though, he shouldn't have anything to worry about, you
Not
think?
at all.
You
No,
think so?
I mean, normally you have a center support, kind of a fifth leg kind of a thing. It could be a center bar running front to back, and then slats going all the way across the side. Because it's such a long span, you need to get some kind of support in the center.
Yeah, and that center bar, I'd put
Like a little foot.
leg underneath
Yeah.
it in the middle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not a bad way to go.
The only thing that I thought about when I saw this was that green and green in arts and crafts furniture generally is one of its hallmarks is like a sense of mass.
Yeah.
And when you widen this out, if you don't make the horizontal pieces also wider, then they might start to look a little thin. And so you'll lose some of that mass, the visual mass that arts and crafts has. So
Yeah.
I thought maybe at least on the horizontal pieces of the bed frame, play around with making them like an inch wider or something, just to see if it brings that sense of mass back to it.
That's a good point. Yeah, I changed one thing and it just
Yeah, changes everything.
Yeah.
All right. So next question number 4 from Joel. How do you go about milling parts for Kumiko? I have a joiner planer combo, that I generally do milling on, but I'm not sure if those tiny sticks would survive that process.
Yeah, because I think he's thinking about milling them in a way that Mike doesn't do and I don't do either anymore because,
Which is sort of understandable, because if you look at any handmade processes, a lot of times, like in the Des King books, I think he starts with individual strips and notches each one individually with a couple saw curves and a chisel to pop out each thing. No, I think I basically start with stock, which is the thickness equals the height of the bars that I want, but it's usually anywhere from 4 to 5 inches wide. and I do all my notching as a wide board, and then I rip that into my final strips. And I use a just nice, sharp, thin curved blade, and I set the table saw rip vents up so that the little strips fit exactly into the notches. I find I can get a really good fit right off the machine. So you're never really ever working with the really small parts at the machine. Everything's larger until you finally rip the strips down. And then once that's done, you're not going back to machine on those.
That sounds like it would be great if you were someone who makes Kumiko all the time. But what if you're looking to make one?
No, same thing.
It's the same. It is.
It's,
Hands down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just not even worth debating.
No.
I've done it the other way. When I first started doing it, I would mill a board up so that the thickness was the height, like Mike's talking about.
Yep.
But then I would cut out I'd rip out strips to make them like 1/8 inch thick or whatever is going to fit into the kerf.
Yeah.
And then I would run them through the drum sander to remove any machine marks to get them exactly the right thickness. And then I would go and one at a time on all these strips, cut the notches on a table saw. And it was just ridiculous. It's just insane. So even if you're just making one Kumiko square,
Make enough for 20.
well, you're not. It's not that necessarily you have to make enough for 20, but you can rip out extra parts because it's possible that as you're pushing a joint together, that if you don't put pressure in the exact right place, you can break the Kumiko piece. So that's important. And then. Just have a couple extra, and then,
The other good thing about using the table saw, even on a small project, is the biggest challenge in making Kumiko is not the design itself. That goes pretty quick. It's actually sizing the grid to the exact opening that you need, especially if you're making furniture. And I do that by using a little finger joint jig, sort of like when you're doing box joints, but I use that to cut the individual dados in each strip, and you can dial in that fit by adjusting that jig on the tabletop until you can get a grid exactly the size you want it. And I think it's much easier to do it in that fashion for me than it is to try to do all these strips individually by hand, even if I didn't have a lot to do.
What we get the question a lot. What kind of wood do you guys use for your Kumiko?
I use Eastern white pine or basswood. Anything with a really fine grain and with a even color to it.
Yeah, I always use basswood.
Okay. All right. Number 5 from Ben. My grandmother is an avid, cutthroat even, domino player. I'd like to make her a wooden set of dominoes coming up for her 80th birthday. Any recommendations on wood selection? I want the pieces to be as heavy as possible.
Ebony comes to mind, but maybe a cheaper source might be like, what do they call it? Blackwood? African blackwood?
I think that's actually more expensive than ebony.
Really?
Yeah, the stuff they use to make like the parts of violin bows
or
and things
clarinets. Isn't that blackwood?
I think that's more expensive.
I think is it kingwood? Is there something black that's cheaper than ebony but really heavy? I think there is.
I don't know.
Dyed white oak?
No, I don't know.
Yeah. African blackwood is more expensive than ebony.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then go ebony.
Go buy ebony.
Do a really good job making these. And here's something. It's sort of like, I would say it's akin to a chess set in that, do you want to spend the time making the pieces, especially for something, you want it really, really nice? Do you have sort of the skills and wherewithal to make a really, really nice set of dominoes? Or do you want to buy a nice set of dominoes and make a really nice box to put them in? Poker chips are the same thing. I don't make poker chips, but I made a lot of boxes for poker chips and bought some nice chips to go in there. And that's really cool. So, I don't know. Because then how are you doing the dots? How are you doing the dots exactly?
I think they sell, I would think Rockler sells templates or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
For drilling.
I don't know.
It sounds like.
Do you want a square bottom hole? Do you want a slightly rounded hole? And then, how do you get the white paint in there? Do you put the paint in and then sand it off and then polish them?
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Or do you inlay contrasting dots of holly in there?
Or inlay metal, that would give you mass as well. I was thinking if you inlaid like, steel pins or something like that, that's going to give you more weight.
Like stainless steel pins.
Yeah.
I think I'm with Mike. I would buy a nice set of dominoes, and if there is such a thing as a nice set of dominoes,
I'm sure
I'm gonna say there is,
very
yeah.
nice sets
and
of dominoes.
then make a really nice box to put them in. That's what I would do.
All right. Well, let's see. Number 6. I need some help spending money. You've come to the right place. FineWoodworking.com membership. Bam. All right. I'm thinking about purchasing a smoothing plane with a high-angle frog. I used to use the ruler trick to put a little back bevel on my plane, and it helps in curly maple and such, but I think I'm ready for a dedicated plane. Should I go for a 50 or 55-degree angle frog? Are there any things I should know? Should I be looking into a bevel-up plane instead, or perhaps a scraper plane? You have a high-angle 4.5, right?
I have a 50-degree frog for my 4 that I don't use. It's back to 45. I have a 55-degree frog for a 4.5, and I usually put a 10-degree back bevel for a 65-degree effective cutting angle. I have
hooks it up to his car to push it through the.
I have a bevel up smoother, which I also have a 45-degree blade for to give me a 52-degree cutting angle, and I have a scraper plane. I never use a scraper plane. Get a scraper.
Yeah.
So forget the scraper plane. I used to discount the whole bevel up plane thing because it's like, why buy a plane with an extra blade when you can buy 2 planes? That said, I was recently given the blade honed at 45 degrees for my smoother, and I actually tried it after a really long time. And it's like, oh, that works really well. So the downside for me is I wouldn't want a bevel up plane as a general smoothing plane just because I don't like the feel of it. There's just a handle, and then there's just like air in front of it. Where in a normal plane, the frog comes up, the blade is right there. It's more of a unit. I can extend my finger, and it's
you can't figure out what to do with your finger.
And I also like the style of playing with the lateral adjuster as a separate adjuster.
Yeah.
And then the depth, and then you get really good just tweaking the lateral adjustment with your thumb as you're planing or in between swipes, and you get really good at adjusting the depth of cut as you go too. And I think both of those things are really important. The bevel up planes, the Lee Nielsen does not have a lateral adjuster. The Veritas does have a lateral adjuster, but it's the Norris style where it affects the depth. One knob in and out affects the depth. You move it right and left, and it affects the lateral adjuster. I don't like that particular adjuster because I'm not really used to it, but also I inadvertently, in sort of adjusting the lateral adjust, I can change the depth or vice versa. So that's why I like a standard plane. It's more for the adjustments and the ergonomics as opposed to the actual performance. Plus, you have a lot more mass, I think. And let's say a bronze number 4 than maybe a beveled up plane.
So, one plane to rule them all for a high angle.
4, 5, 4.5. Bevel up, number 4. What?
4.5. Bevel up.
That's a beast. I mean,
Yeah.
Like the 4.5 with a high angle frog and a back bevel. I literally bruise the palm of my hand when I'm using this thing, but it will get you out of tight situations that you couldn't get out of anywhere. However, not any situation that a regular card scraper isn't going to handle for you.
Okay.
So I would rather for me personally, I get a number 4 with a standard angle, get a card scraper, and then buy a bevel up smoother at some point because it's great on end grain. Use it as a shooting board. Sure, get an extra blade for some really high cutting action. Mm-hmm. That's a really nice setup. You're going to use all 3 of those things all the time. And even if you're not using your beveled up as a high angle, you'll be using it as a low angle on end grain for shooting, all kinds of stuff.
So, assuming he has a number 4 already, which I think he does.
Okay, cool.
You're saying get the bevel up.
I guess I am.
Wow.
Yeah.
Matt?
Oh. Am I still on the podcast?
No.
Man, he gets going sometimes, and you don't want to stop him because it's just going to run you over.
I mean, yeah, the real answer to the question is, well, what else do you have? Tell me what you have first. But of the things that he offers here, I would not for any amount of money get a 55 angle frog. Because I have a 4.5 with a 50-degree angle frog, and like it's hard to push. It is, it is significantly different pushing that as opposed to a 4 with a 45-degree angle frog. So I really do like the 4.5 high angle 50-degree because like on curly cherry, like that's the answer. You know, that's often the answer, and for me, a card scraper is great, but it's something that, like, if I had a whole, like, a box top or something, like drawer fronts or something that needed to be cleaned up, I would want to do that with a hand plane as opposed to a scraper. So I would want that high angle, that 50-degree angle frog on the hand plane first, and then if there was any tear out, I would go back with, a little spot and clean it up. Mm-hmm. So... I do have a low angle jack plane, which I originally bought like 10 years ago to do ingrain on a shooting board. And I never use it anymore because I have a Lee Nielsen iron miter plane.
Right.
You just like saying that.
I do like saying because they're no longer made, and people are always sending me notes on Instagram and stuff to see if I will sell it. Which eventually the price will get high enough.
It's pretty. It's getting up there.
Low angle. What I do something similar with a low angle block plane. That I have a blade that I sharpen at like 35 degrees, right? So 35 plus 12 would be 47 or something. Maybe it's 30, and so the effective cutting angle is 42. And so it becomes like a little smoothing plane that I use on the small boxes that I make. And that works really well. Yeah.
All right. Let's, this one's from Woody HG. My go-to finish on most of my small projects is canned clear shellac cut to a 1-pound cut. Sometimes I notice there's less liquid in the jars or the cut is thicker than I'd like after a few days, throwing off consistency and drying time. I used to use mason jars to ensure a tight seal, but eventually the rings seized up after being gunked up by shellac. I've since turned to peanut butter jars, which has a nice wide mouth to let me use a pad to apply the finish, but they seem to be less airtight. What's the best way to store finish?
Mike, have you ever had what he's talking about? Like, I assume that if it's actually happening, what's happening is that denatured alcohol is evaporating from the mixed shellac. Yeah. Have you ever experienced that?
I don't think it's evaporating while the lid is on. I think it's evaporating as you're using it. Yeah. I mean, that would be my guess, is that as you're using it, it gets like half full. You're releasing all that alcohol with an open container for 10, 15 minutes, a half an hour as you're, finishing a piece of furniture or something. I think that's when you're using it. I wouldn't worry too much about what's going on. It should be a sealed container, somewhat airtight. I think
use mason jars.
I use mason jars. They do get stuck. I finally figured out a good solution for that. I used to like pour alcohol around the top and try to work it into that little seam. I get a little like plastic deli container, fill it up with maybe like half inch, 3/4 of an inch of alcohol in there. Turn the can upside down, lid down, stick it in there for like 5 or 10 minutes, and it will just soak all the gunk off of the threads, and you can pop that thing right open.
Okay. Has anyone ever? What if you waxed the threads? Do you think that would?
No.
I've tried wax paper, but that's like gets really good. And that
didn't
wasn't
work for
good.
me.
Actually, someone tried that for me. Here, I put wax paper on there for you. It's like, oh, thanks.
Sounds like a chisel incident too.
I wouldn't use it again.
Not going to say.
However, one thing I've done because I've sort of switched from a shellac rag to a shellac pad is I just buy those little plastic pointy squeeze top bottles with the red cap, and I fill those up with shellac. So my go-to sort of like the motherlode shellac in the jars, they don't get open and closed all the time. I just sort of pour it off into my squeeze bottle, cut it to the cut I want, use those. And so I'm working with the canning jars much, much less now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have also had this experience where your jar gets all gunked up.
Yeah.
And what I do now is before I close the jar back up, I just get a paper towel with some denatured alcohol on it, run it around the inside of the lid, run it around the outside of the jar, and then close it up, and it never gets gunked up.
So you just clean up, and that works.
Right.
Wow.
Well,
Yeah.
I feel a little stupid now.
But
That's good to know.
that works really well.
Yeah.
I like the squirted out of a mustard bottle thing you're talking
Yeah,
about.
that works really well.
I also like to put a shoe on the wall and then put my shellac jar in the shoe.
You get a shoe.
First of all, yeah, you got to get a shoe.
All right, question number 9. I'm looking to purchase a machine for making mortises quicker. I'm leaning towards a benchtop unit for space and budgetary constraints. I know Mike likes the floor units, but they are unfortunately far outside my budget and need at the moment. I see a lot of pros using slot mortisers. What's the advantage of this? It seems like it is much harder to see what you're doing.
So if a floor standing
Steven.
mortiser is outside of your budget,
Yeah, slot mortiser, don't
slot
worry.
mortiser, forget about it. The advantage is, one of the advantages is that with a slot mortiser, you can do more than just mortises. You should be able to do tenons.
Mm-hmm.
You can also easily cut mortises and tenons on end grain with one.
Yeah.
You can put things down usually at any angle you want to on the table.
So angle parts and curved parts.
Angle
much
parts
easier.
and curved parts are super easy. They are tremendously more versatile than a benchtop mortiser, which can basically mortise things.
Yeah. Philip Morley made his own, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, his shop made one. I've seen many shop made ones. His shop made one is the bomb.
Yeah. So go on Instagram and look at his. And it gives you a sense of what a shop-made horizontal mortiser can do, and also just what a horizontal mortiser can do anyway.
Yeah, but it is a big investment to make something like that. Not monetarily, maybe.
Time investment. Yeah.
It's a time investment, and you have to be able to do it well. The last thing you want is a poorly made shop made mortiser.
Yeah, a really inexpensive horizontal mortiser is called a router and a guide bushing and a straight bit, but it's not horizontal, it's vertical. And you just learn to make your templates and clamp them to the workpiece. And Jeff Miller has a great article on that. And a lot of people, hey, I just
We
route
just made
my
a video
mortises.
on that.
Yeah.
And Michael Fortune twice has shown his mortising jig of that nature, and it's really smart.
Yeah. And for a floor standing mortiser, that's just basically, it's a round drill bit inside of a hollow square chisel. So basically you are the floor standing mortiser, in that you drill a line of holes, get a chisel, and then you chop it square. And I understand it's not as fast, but it does come down to, it always comes down to sort of time versus money.
Yeah.
And then also I think the other factor is enjoyment. What do you want to be doing?
Right.
I think the best alternative for a horizontal mortiser right now is a domino. Boom, you're done. Same thing, curved parts, angle parts. You can screw that down to a base and really get really accurate with it. Matt did a great article with
Tim
Selesky on sort of hot rodding your domino. Really, really cool. And you don't have to use dominoes if you don't want to. You can just make regular tenons if you want to, or go that slip tenon route. So I think that's probably, if I was going to go that route, a domino is a good investment.
The
It's
smaller
expensive, too.
domino is going to cost you around $1,000 right now.
Yeah,
I
but
think.
you can get a benchtop mortiser for $500.
Yeah, the downside of benchtop mortiser is that typically floor standing, they have sort of a XY table. They go side to side and front to back. So front to back is good for alignment, and then side to side allows you to clamp a workpiece really firmly and just move it back and forth. Benchtop mortisers typically have some sort of hold down, which holds a piece down, but if it's too tight, you can't slide it back and forth. And the whole notion of having to loosen the hold down, slide the piece over a quarter of an inch, tighten it back down, one more quarter, do that 15 times to cut a mortise isn't going to happen. So for me, the hold down on a typical benchtop mortiser is the drawback, because it has to be loose enough to slide the work, but tight enough to not allow the work to lift off the bed of the machine, because if it does and it tilts, you can break a bit. And I broke a number of bits on a Delta benchtop mortiser. I think just because the hold down wasn't holding the workpiece down. I've never broken a bit on a floor standing Powermatic, just because you don't run that risk. So
But going back to what you said about it's time or money.
yeah.
in the decisions. If you do get a benchtop mortiser, just be prepared to crank down the hole down every single time, or
you learn to use a machine, and I got by with it for a long time. So, I mean, what does not work, and don't do this. Don't get the hollow chisel mortiser attachment for a drill press.
Yeah.
It's a completely different machine, and they don't work. And once it's on your drill press, you don't have a drill press anymore until you take it off.
Yeah. All right, number 10 from Jim. I was cutting some grooves on my router table, and much to my surprise, the bit popped up through the wood. The bit was pulling out of the collet. After changing my shorts, I adjusted the bit and the collet and several times, including really cranking down on the collet nut, and tried various depths of cut, but I continued to have the problem. What was going on here?
Well, then he bought a new router instead of a new bit.
So
he took the Pekovich approach. Buy a new tool.
Yeah, he did all this other stuff, and he's still using the bit, and it's still coming up, and it's never like, just get rid of the bit. It's like a $15 bit. Get a new bit.
I'm guessing it's probably a spiral upcut bit.
Probably a spiral upcut. And I'm actually, I wonder if this is actually, is it 8 millimeter? Is that the other?
No, it was a 1/4 inch bit.
But they're very close. 1/4 and 8 millimeter, I think.
1/4 and 6.
Whatever the other, there's a European shank size. And I wonder if it's under a 1/4 inch, and he's using that. And so no matter what he does, it does not tighten down. And so it's always coming up.
That definitely could be the problem. I also think it's the method of installing the bit.
That's what I was going with.
Yes.
Yeah, because if you put the bit all the way down and seat it all the way down as far as it can go, the problem is, the way you tighten up that little collet, it's tapered, and it forces the tapered collet down into the tapered little recess, tightening it. But if the bit is all the way down to the bottom, it can prevent that collet from
seating.
Yeah.
So, put your bit in. You don't want it, sticking out too far. I always, stick it down all the way in. Then I try to lift it up, maybe anywhere from 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, just so I know that bit isn't seated.
Yeah, because in order to tighten up, the collet has to pull the bit down with it. And if it can't pull that bit any further down, it's never going to get tight. And I'll admit, I bought a new router one time because this same thing happened. But this was like my first router, and I was looking for any excuse I could to buy a new router, and it worked.
Yes.
I saw that bit come up, and I was like, I got to go buy a new router.
That's fine. Yes.
But what Mike said is probably almost certainly the explanation. But it's odd is that he says, a really good point. He says that other bits aren't problematic. So if other bits aren't problematic, and only this bit is problematic, get rid of the bit and just buy a new bit. And it's not worth $15.
Now that he has 5 routers.
Yeah. He says, I kept buying new routers. It kept happening.
Yeah. I don't blame him.
It's just not, I would have, I've had that happen to me before, and it's usually, I think, a result of not putting the bit in properly when you tighten it down.
Yep. It does come up instead of go down. Yeah. It's amazing how it works.
And that isn't very intuitive.
No, right. You think if it loosens,
until somebody tells you that this is, you need to leave room there. And don't some people, I think Raleigh Johnson puts an O-ring at the bottom of the shank or something. So there's always something, there's always some squish to the.
So he knows how far it's going to go down?
Well, it's like then you can drop the bit all the way down, and there's still room for the bit to drop down. So the O-ring compresses. And I'll have to email him about that.
I thought the O-ring goes on the shank, so you put it down, the O-ring hits the collet, and it keeps the bottom of the bit from bottoming out.
Maybe that's it. That makes more sense. I'll put the answer in the show.
Sounds like a normal Raleigh solution. It's so far over the top.
That's why we love them. All right, number 11. From Fred, I'm making a coffee table using a bent lamination for the curved leg. I'm hemming and hawing as to what type of glue I should use. Titebond 1, 2, or 3. Should I use 2-part glue or an epoxy or Gorilla Glue or blah, 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 blah. What does he use?
Gorilla Glue.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gorilla Glue.
Really?
Yeah.
How come?
Because it creates a hard glue line. And with the bent lamination, we don't know what what the curvature is.
Right.
But the more severe the curvature, the more it's going to want to spring back. Titebond or any other glue like that, they have like they call them soft glue lines. There's a little play in them, so it can open back up from the spring back. Epoxy's just a pain in the butt. Gorilla Glue is easy to use in this type of application, and when I've used it for bent laminations, whether it was panels or drawer fronts or whatever, it's really nice in that you can lay down a really nice thin layer easily. It just spreads. In a way, it just spreads better than like water-based glues do. Do
you spray do you spread it on both surfaces? Or do you spread one and spray the opposite with water?
The second thing, I spread it on one, spray this other one with water.
Cool.
And it creates that rigid glue line, so you don't have to worry about things creeping on you after it's glued up.
Cool. And that's available at the hardware store or home center.
Everywhere.
Glues.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've used the 2-part Unibond 800, but you got to order it. You got a whole bunch. You got to mix it.
Got to wear a hazmat suit.
There are temperature constraints. I mean, it works really well, but I've ended up using Titebond in the past because I just want to do this now. I didn't think about ordering my glue, but I really want to glue it up. But now I would have used Gorilla Glue. The one thing to think about is if this bent part is at either end going to somehow be restrained, then Michael Fortune has said, then, creep isn't really an issue because it's locked into place. Yes.
Or maybe he said that in particular to even steam bent stuff that, if you're locking it in with some type of joinery at either end, you might be able to get away with just using Titebond. And I know that like when I did the bent panel article with him where you're gluing up pieces of flexible plywood into like a sandwich and then veneering over it, we used the Canadian equivalent of Titebond 3.
Because, I mean, it's so flexible, there really isn't any springback force to something like that.
Right. There's no, with something like flexible plywood, there is no springback.
I didn't know Tim Horton sold glue.
Yeah.
All right. I feel the need to, since this episode is sponsored by Titebond, to point out that Titebond does sell polyurethane glue. So
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, it's
really?
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, Gorilla Glue used to be synonymous with polyurethane because that's all they made. They also make PVA glues as well.
Yes, they do.
They do.
Yeah. So
basically, you want a polyurethane.
That was a
glue.
Kleenex situation.
Yes,
I was saying use a tissue, but everyone calls a tissue a Kleenex. So I was sorry, Titebond.
They won't listen this far, anyways. All right. So moving on to a question from Rob. Assuming I'm okay with the added expense of sandpaper, is getting a drum sander a viable alternative to a massive joiner? My thought is I'd make a sled out of 3/4 inch MDF, like a planer sled. Then I can joint 20-inch wide case sides in one pass.
Yeah, no. If you were going to do this, you'd get a planer and do it, not a drum sander. The problem with a drum sander is that it is so slow.
It's really slow.
It's really slow. Now, if you want to pop for a 50-inch time saver, wide belt sander, you might have a viable option here. But and
then you need a big dust collector.
So there, you're in $20,000 now.
Yeah,
and that joiner looks pretty cheap. I would know. You don't want to do this.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a standard size joiner, I don't think it replaces a joiner, but on his thing about like 20-inch wide solid wood case size, that is problematic. I used to joint plane everything, glue it up, and then take it to a lumber yard that had a wide belt sander, and they would sand it for me, which was okay. Sometimes things ended up a little thinner than you wanted, and some really heavy scratch marks, but you could, but that's not a bad way to use a wide belt sander, is to sort of join it, plane it, glue it up as flat as you can, scrape the glue off, and then just shove that thing through a sander, flip it, sand it again.
I rented time at Conway for my dining room table. I think I spent like $30 to get that cleaned up, and it was well worth it.
Yes.
So if you're not, if you're building 20-inch wide pieces all the time, then maybe a drum sander's in the equation, but I don't think I would think of it as my joiner.
Yeah.
I think I would think of it as the cleanup after your panel glue up.
If you're building 20-inch wide stuff all the time, you're a professional. You don't have time to mess with a drum sander. You've got to get a wide belt sander.
Yeah.
You can't. Drum sanders I just don't think they're made. We're probably going to get in trouble with somebody else, but I just don't think I would use one for that type of work. And you would want to go with a wide belt sander for that.
Yeah, and even for like really large tabletops now, in a class situation, we've run them down to a little time saver if it's like dining table class. But for myself, I've just taken the time to get a lot better, more accurate with my glue ups. I get the calls. I make sure I'm doing a good job jointing the material so it wants to glue up flat. A lot of clamping calls to keep everything really tight and flush at the glue lines. And after that is most part, you scrape off the glue and either, hand plane it or even just a lot of times a card scraper is enough to bring everything level. It's not, if you're really careful, you can sort of avoid the necessity for that.
Yeah. My glue up for my table was fine. It was when I was hand playing, I had a massive tear out, and it was like, all right.
Yeah, instead of a drum sander, buy a small domino and use that to index your parts together when you glue them up.
Or buy a slot mortiser. All right. Question number 13. Recently, I've grown a beard at the request of my 6-year-old. I'm worried that my respirator won't be effective because of my beard. I see that you all have facial hair. What are your thoughts on beards and dust?
Yeah.
I don't let my kid tell me what to do.
Yeah, you got a 6-year-old kid. Who's the boss? So here's one thing I do know about dust masks. They are not effective with facial hair because the facial hair breaks the seal between the dust mask and the skin. So you might need to go to something like what they call a PAPR, a positive air pressure respirator.
Yeah.
And you can use that.
Which they look silly, but man, I bet it's nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
they can be somewhat heavy if they're like battery powered and the battery's sitting on top of your head.
Right.
The other one is you've got this hood kind of thing and face shield that pulls over your head, and then there's a battery pack blower which hooks onto your belt. I actually have one of those, and I resort to that like when I was ripping my rigid foam insulation on my table saw. Nasty stuff. I don't wear anything pretty much right now. But most of my methods don't create a lot of dust, or the dust collector is on like to a machine to catch the majority of it.
Right. I mean, the industrial standard for dust collection is that you collect it at the source.
Yeah.
And you don't but that's hard to do, have perfect dust collection at the source in a home shop.
Yeah.
I did my thought.
Oh, but you can, like, for a random orbit sander, hook it up to your shop vac.
Yes.
That's like almost 100%.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. So,
but like routers, stuff like
it's
that.
not dust. Those are chips.
Okay.
Two different things.
Now when you're doing MDF to make that...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Nice little chamfer bit on there. Yeah. I don't know. What do you do, Matt?
Well, for the machines that I use dust collection. Like my router table, get perfect chip collection. Bandsaw, extremely good.
Yeah.
Joiner, really good. Planer, excellent. Table saw, not so hot because it's just an old table saw. And eventually I'll replace it with a new saw where I will get good collection. And if I can, I'll use an overarm thing to help there because, I'm only 45 and I foresee a lot of...
You're only 45?
I see a lot of years of woodworking left, and I don't want lungs full of wood dust. So as I can, I'll replace my machines with ones that have better dust collection.
It is something to be serious about.
Definitely.
I mean, I put a mask on. Am I getting 100% sealed? Probably not, but I don't know, maybe I feel better about it. But if I can smell the wood through the mask, then I know I'm not getting as good of a seal as I need. And usually, well, no, seriously, because
Yeah.
if you smell the dust, it's not filtering it out.
Right.
You know? And usually I use the Eclipse mask, and I've had really good luck with that. But
I will say this about beards and wood dust or wood chips. The combination of the two, some people out there find irresistible.
Yes, I have to say this is true.
Yeah, this is very true. This is very much true.
So, but that said, I do a lot of times, like if I'm sanding, because I also used to just sand all the time, start at 100 grit all the way up to 220, and that's a whole lot of dust. But if you're hand planing, scraping, maybe just hitting the final thing with some fine sandpaper, it's far less dust I'm kicking up. But I'll throw on a dust mask even with the beard, and yeah, it isn't like the perfect seal, but you're doing something there.
yeah.
You're doing a lot. And the
Yes.
beard sort of acts like a little filter on the sides.
Yes.
I've-
this is
I've-
Mike science. This is not real science.
I've given up on the paper ones, though.
Really?
And, like we have a box of paper dust masks that we keep down at the shop, basically just for changing out the dust collector bag, and it just fogs up my glasses.
Oh, yeah,
and
that's
then,
great.
like, I
You got to get the one with the little breathy hole in it.
yeah, I know. Well, we don't have those down there, and I should get another Eclipse mask and keep it down there. But
I have one dust mask, and it like hangs from the handle of my mortiser, and it's like the inside is as dusty as any
Yeah.
place in
Right.
my shop.
Vic Teslin keeps his dust masks in a Ziploc bag, and I saw that. I was like, why have I never thought of that?
Yeah, that's too smart for me.
Yeah. All right. Question number 14. Do you store your finishes and chemicals in a fireproof cabinet?
No.
No.
No. That's from Ben as well. So that was quick. Let's see. Did we skip one? No. All right. Last
But
one.
what he wants to do, would that suffice? I have no idea.
Yeah. Which is just a metal cabinet with adding insulation.
Actually, I take this back. I take my answer back. Right now, I do not. But remember I mentioned that radial arm saw earlier? The base of it was a metal cabinet. And I kept all my finishing supplies in there when it was in my shop. So I take that back.
If I was, Greg Pilati and, had gallons and gallons of finishing supplies, I think I would keep them in a separate building, probably would.
In a
but-
commercial shop
yeah.
subject to OSHA standards, yes,
Yeah.
you would.
I mean,
Yeah.
but I have maybe one can of poly in my shop right now and a couple of cans of shellac. I don't know.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding used to be that you put all your finishes in this like metal fireproof thing. My original assumption was that it's because if those chemicals spontaneously combust and catch on fire, it's going to protect the rest of your shop. But I think it's the opposite, in that they're fireproof things so that when your shop catches on fire, you're delaying the access of the oxygen
To the boom stuff.
to the boom stuff.
Yeah.
But if my shop is going down, I mean, a little hardened half-quarter water locks ain't gonna make a difference. So, I don't know.
I feel like Jeff really would know the answer to this.
Yeah, I think it's more about availability of oxygen. So restricting the amount of oxygen that can get to the stuff.
So insulation isn't really you're not restricting
if
heat
you're-
to it.
You want to make it airtight.
Yes.
Airtight, yeah.
Airtight's better than insulated from heat.
So get some weather stripping, and when you close that door, make sure it presses that weather
Or
stripping.
just spray foam it every time.
yes, spray foam it every time.
However, oil soak rags, that is a huge, huge hazard. That's a much different thing. And
Yes.
I always just either throw them over the fence in my backyard or I hang them from the branches of a bush by my shop door.
Put them in your neighbor's trash can.
Yes. That's really important. You want to treat
And
those
that
seriously.
that applies to my wife's uncle is a woodworker, and he had a piece of steel wool that he had. He was doing a final finish with boiled linseed oil and steel wool, and
Wow.
that combusted in his shop,
Wow.
burned through the plastic container it was sitting on, and so be weary of that as well. And so I throw out my gloves as well outside. I'm just super paranoid. Anything that BLO is touched or anything like that, I put it outside.
I left a drummer in my shop once, and he spontaneously combusted. Oh my gosh! All right.
Shark sandwich. All right, last one question. I mean, we're doing it. We're doing it. 15 questions. This is tiring.
I did not point that out as we went along, but I will point out some of these questions. It turns out were time sensitive.
Oh, I knew that.
I know.
Yeah.
Like Granny did not get her domino set.
Granny's 87.
Yes.
All right. I am going to take the plunge and purchase a premium plane. I had my eye on a Lee Nielsen number 4 for some time, but I recently came across a number 164 low angle smoother. Do you have any experience with this plane? I thought I could purchase it and hone an extra blade at a steeper angle to deal with tricky grain, and the 90-degree plane to use as a scraper. It seems like the number 164 can do everything the number 4 can do and more. What am I missing? We kind of already answered this. But.
I think it's really important to go out and buy both. And use them, and then just sort of see for yourself.
And then sell one to your neighbor if you don't want it.
Yeah.
Or just keep it.
I have had the same thought that, like, I'm going to buy one tool to do multiple things. And it's like the opposite of the Alton Brown, don't buy a unitasker. I think in the workshop, I want one tool to do one job most of the time, because the likelihood of me switching out the blade to do this task or that task is not very good. So that's my argument for the number 4.
As a because it's not multi-purpose.
Yeah, it's a smoother. Use it as a smoother. Boom, done.
Well, yeah. The thing is, a number 4 is really just a smoother. You can use it on a shooting board. It's your hand is going to hurt. You can a sharp one you can use on end grain and it's fine.
Yep.
So it will do all the things that the 164, I believe, it's really a low angle jack plane. It's like the size of a number 5. It'll do shooting boards better. It'll be more comfortable to hold that way. It'll do end grain about the same.
It's a lower angle, so it'll be slightly better.
A little bit better, a little harder, less hard to push. And then on face grain, if you have 2 different blades, it'll do fine. But here's the thing. It's like I have 2 different blades for my low angle block plane. I don't switch out between them. Even though I have one, it's just like, oh, now I'm going to use the one that's sharpened lower until it gets dull. And then I'll
use the sharp one.
Then I'll use the sharp one. And then, so, switching out blades all the time is a pain in the butt, especially if you need to switch between functions.
Yeah.
You don't want to, because if you get that smoothing blade plane perfectly set on a low angle jack, and then you need to do end grain, and then you got to go back and do long grain again, it's like you got to reset up the plane.
And I have a low angle jack, and it's my most used plane, but I've never thought about switching out the blade.
And I just have to say, a Lee Nielsen number 4, either the iron body or the bronze, it's a beautiful tool.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the aesthetics, the way it functions, the way it works. I mean, that would be the short answer, and it's sort of the easy answer, maybe the non-answer, is you want both. I'd start with a number 4 in a block plane in a scraper, and then add a either low angle smoother or jack to get some versatility and functionality. Use it for end grain, use it for shooting. It'll shoot a little bit better, but the other thing is that shooting end grain really beats up your plane iron. So save your number 4 for your really, final finish stuff, and use a low angle for all the other good stuff. And who cares if it gets beat up a little bit? And then sort of I would look, okay, you need one plane. It's not so much what do I get? It's sort of like, I think the real answer is where do I start? And I think you start with a number 4 block plane scraper, add a low angle plane to that. Some people start with the low angle plane. I mean, a lot of people do. In fact, Lee Nielsen sort of recommends it. It's not a bad answer. You're just happening to ask a person who says get the number 4.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
yeah. I was just thinking about this as you were saying that. Like, really what you're asking is where do I start?
Yeah.
It's always the hard thing when I talk to someone who's just getting started in woodworking. And they say, and I understand that's because I can still remember being in a position where I didn't have any money, and you want to do stuff that you can't do because you don't have the tool to do it. So you want to get the tool, right? And now with 10 years, or no, more like 20 years of experience looking back, I can see, like, from that perspective, it's like, well, really what you need to do is just knock it off and buy the 2 planes. But which is probably the best answer, but for someone who's just starting out, it's
impossible.
It's impossible. And I wonder, I always start to think about, well, the question really is, well, what do you like to make? Tell me what you do, and I'll tell you what tools to get.
Right. Carving spoons, don't start with a number 4.
Right. Yeah. Start with a comfortable chair and a corncob pipe and a hat.
Start with a half a log, put some sticks in it. And there you got your shoe carving bench, your spoon carving bench.
Shoe carving bench. Ben's going to
I'm
make
going to start carving shoes.
Yes.
2 pairs of wooden clogs.
Yes. Clumping.
Yes.
All right, let's get to some listener comments. This one is from Roberto. I love this podcast. This podcast makes being in the car the next best thing to being in my shop. The tips are great. I'm always buying new books or reading articles or ordering tools that I learned about from the podcast. I'm a subscriber to the magazine and to the website. The podcast really ties it all together and makes it easy to get the most out of the subscriptions and offer and discover new aspects of woodworking that I might have otherwise missed.
That guy writes ad copy for somebody.
Us.
Yeah.
And on YouTube, in reference to, I believe, the last podcast, on the topic of beginner mistakes, I was the guy who did way too much researching and not creating. Like Mike said, stop researching and get out and start building. I wish I would have done that sooner.
I know.
Yeah. I have a reader comment
Oh,
that, Philip Morley from Texas,
Yeah.
the great furniture maker, he texted me this week and said, the podcast was much better now that you're back on it, Matt. So there's a listener comment.
All right.
I had a listener comment, not quite so self-serving. One of recent class I was teaching, one of my students said, I really like Ben. So good job, Ben.
Oh, I thought his name was Ben. All right.
No.
Great. All right. Well, that's all for this episode of Shop Talk Live. If you have questions you'd like us to answer on the show, send them to shoptalk@taunton.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please click that thumbs up button. Finally, you can keep up with us with Fine Woodworking on Instagram and on Facebook, and look for all of us on Instagram as well. Thanks for listening. Now go build something. Need a better one.
Go buy Matt's book, too.
Yeah.
That's right.
Number 1
That
on
was the
Amazon.
last outro. Thank you.
That was your. What did you say? Now go build something. Yeah.
Now go build
It'll
something.
come.
It's okay.
Yeah. Go build something.
That's not bad.
Yeah. What did Tom used to say? Go get it in the shop.
No, have fun in the shop.
Have fun in the shop.
Mm.
Thanks for
And
listening.
Ed, I went back and I listened, and Ed used to just say, cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Right?
No, that
cheers
was
or
Dr.
Cheerio
Nick.
or something.
He did not say cheerio.
I feel a little stupid.
50-degree frog. For my 4 that I don't use, it's back to 45. I have 55-degree frog for a 4.5.
I feel a little stupid.
And I usually put a 10-degree back bevel for a 65-degree effective cutting angle.
I feel a little stupid.
I have a bevel up smoother, which I also have a 45-degree blade for to give me a 52-degree cutting angle.
I feel a little stupid.
And I have a scraper plane. I never use a scraper plane. Get a scraper. So forget the scraper plane.
I feel a little stupid.
4, 5, 4.5, 4, bevel up, number 4, bevel up, number 4. What?
I feel a little
For
stupid.
me personally, I get a number 4 with a standard angle, get a card scraper, and then buy a bevel up smoother.
I feel a little stupid.
At some point, that's a really nice setup. You're going to use all 3 of those things all the time.
I feel a little stupid.
I guess I am.